So taxpayers in New York, whatever taxpayers are left, taxpayers are going to shell out more than $36,000 per child for Mamdani's free 2K pilot program. Okay? That's $13,000 more per child than the private market. Let me repeat that. Program designed to make child care less expensive and cheaper is 55% more expensive than the system that already exists. Why wouldn't you just say, instead of coming up with our whole new system, why don't we just use that system and we'll pay them the $23,000 instead of the $36,000? Because this is not a bug. This is the system, all right? I put up on the chalkboard, there's a 3-step pattern to socialist programs, okay? And you can almost explain every socialist program in 3 steps. Step 1, you got to declare something a right. Housing is a right. Healthcare is a right. Childcare is a right. Because you have to start there, because once you declare it a right, you never talk about the cost again. You talk about morality. You talk about you don't believe that children should be taken care of. No, but it's 36,000 instead of 23. That this is a right. We're doing what's right. Okay. So anyone asking about math instantly becomes a villain because it's a human right. The second step is they promise you that it'll only cost the rich. If we just got these rich people to pay their fair share, millionaires are going to pay. Okay. That's who's going to pay for this. The millionaires, the people who aren't paying their fair share of taxes. Okay. That's step 2. It's only going to be paid for by the rich. It does never affect you. You just get the free stuff. All right. Here's the problem. Millionaires, unlike most people, are very mobile. Okay. They don't like something, they move. They can move. When taxes spike, they move. Why? Well, we saw in France, they put a wealth tax on. Even French, the French put on a wealth tax for billions and uber millionaires. People started moving out of the country and they're like, okay, that was a bad idea. And they reversed it. Okay. When they leave, what happens? The tax base collapses. We're only going to this will only be affect the top 10% of wage earners, and you're so far away from that, you don't have to worry about the top 10%. You're not in the top 10%. Unless the top 10% decide to leave. Then guess who's in the top 10%? The one that was the 80 to 90%. And if they leave, guess who's in the top 10%? As jobs start to go away, as people get poorer because of socialism, you find yourself in the top 10%. Somebody's got to pay for it. And then the third step that happens every time with socialism, you can count on these 3 steps. The system becomes unsustainable. It starts to break. And then the government says, we've got to fix this. Okay, they don't say, let's get out of it. They say, we're going to fix this. And here's why it breaks. Because the government, Marxism, socialists, they don't respond to signals. The market signals, they don't respond to that. They respond to political incentives. So, who cares if it's 36,000 over 23? We're not talking about math, we're talking about rights. Okay? And you're not going to have to worry about it. The rich are going to pay for it. And when it doesn't work, they know all they have to do is just find a way to convince you that somebody else is screwing you, and you'll continue to vote for them. That's a lot easier than fixing things. So the costs rise, bureaucracy grows, fraud appears, and suddenly the system costs far more than the private system it replaced. Because we know this one will, because it started there. And that's what we're seeing. So why does this happen? Well, it's happening now because people are feeling like capitalism has failed. And the reason why they feel that way is because we haven't done capitalism for a long time. Okay, we are in crony capitalism. The capitalism in America today is barely capitalism. It's absolutely corrupt because it's in bed with the government. The military-industrial complex. Everybody talks about that. Everybody talks about the military, and everybody accepts that, okay? That big business is in bed with the federal government. Well, why don't you make that connection with healthcare? That big healthcare and big insurance is in bed with the federal government. And every time the federal government says they're going to fix something, it's not fixing the big corporations. It's fixing you and helping the big corporations, right? Have you noticed that? Every time they say, we're going to, Obamacare is going to lower your cost by $2,000 per family, and it's gone up by what, $3,000 per family? You didn't say anything, and they're still telling you, well, that's because we got to fix it. And who are they in bed with? Donald Trump is the first guy who says, you know what, insurance companies, right or wrong, he's the first guy who says, we're not doing that anymore. But this market, even like this, it's still operating in two realities that Marxism ignores: incentives and scarcity. When people spend their own money, they look for value. When you have, you get a big a check back from the IRS, that's your money. But because they've held it for so long, it feels free to you. It doesn't feel like your money. It feels like you won the lottery. And so what do? How do you spend it? Very few people take it and go, you know what? I'm going to save this. I'm going to pay down debt. Most people will take it and go, we're going on vacation. And when somebody has given you money, this is why people who win the lottery, they always go broke, because they didn't earn it. And so they just blow the money. When it's your money, you don't blow it. When politicians spend your money, it's not their money. All they're doing is they're trying to build up a way that they can always get voted back in. And that's the entire difference. The value they're looking for is, how am I going to keep my power? So you have that strategy going on. And then also in New York, you also have the strategy of Cloward and Piven. This is the darker possibility on why these things are happening and why they're appealing. In the 1960s, two professors at the City University of New York, Cloward and Piven, husband and wife, proposed something really, really radical. Overwhelm the government system. Get everybody that can possibly be on welfare or on the system, get them in, sign them up, and flood the system with demand. It will cause the system to go bankrupt. And you know what? They used it in the 1970s, and what did it do to New York? New York went bankrupt. It worked. Then, in the 1980s, did they go away? No, they continued. In the 1990s, did they go away? Well, Cloward was dead, but Frances Fox Piven wasn't, and she was good friends with the Clintons. Guess what she had to do, what her job was with Clinton in the Clinton administration? Do you even know? She's the Piven in Cloward and Piven, collapse the system, get everybody into the system, collapse it financially, so then we're going to build another system that it will collapse into, and it'll be a Marxist system. Do you know what her job with Clinton was to design the system? The motor voter law. Now, wait a minute. Hang on just a second. I thought she was all about finances. No, she's all about Marxism and collapsing a system into a new Marxist system. So they came up with a way to collapse it, and that's get everybody on board. But you also need to get everybody to be able to vote the way you want them to vote. So let's get every possible person we can to say, yeah, they're registered to vote. All you have to do is just sign up for your license. And now all of a sudden you can vote. See how these two are now attached to each other? This has been a very long time coming. And anybody who says and tells you that, I can show you the evidence. I can show you in their own words what they're saying they're going to do and have now done. But if you bring it up, that's a conspiracy. Well, yes, it is a conspiracy. It's just not a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy fact. So they use this crisis, and they use the lax voting laws to replace capitalism and our rule of law with something entirely new. So that's what's happening in a couple of places. Okay? New York, Minnesota, California. And I'm not sure, is it ideological blindness? The first reason that this is happening is because, they actually believe in this because they are Marxist and they're just that stupid. They just don't look at human nature that they just do that. Or is it because they know exactly what they're doing, that Marxism never works, and so you're going to have to collapse it and they win. But the result is the same. Programs expand, costs explode, the system collapses. And then the politicians demand more power to fix the crisis that they created. If you look at Venezuela, people think, collapse happens overnight. It doesn't. And that's why they can get away with a lot of this. Venezuela looked in the late 1990s exactly like America, okay? It was doing well. It was the second richest nation in the hemisphere next to us. They had all this oil. It was great. Then they decided, you know what? We're greedy. We're horrible. We have debts we have to pay. We have to help people out. We have to help people out that, aren't working because we're just too greedy. All of this stuff that everything's been saying to us. And so they go into free housing and free healthcare and free food programs. And they start slowly. First, they just have to dismantle capitalism and take over the natural gas and the oil industry, which then starts to collapse their economy, which means more people have to have health care and more people have to have free housing. And so they say, don't worry about it. We're only going to tax the rich, and everybody is cheering. And then the wealthy left and businesses started to fall apart. Businesses closed, production collapsed, and suddenly the middle class became the rich. And then they were paying the bill, and then they were no longer rich. And so then all of a sudden you have the poor people, and you don't have a way to pay for any of these programs. So let me give you one way to convince your friends, okay? Nothing is free. Nothing is free. You will either pay now through prices or later through taxes and collapse. Capitalism, when it's done openly, it makes the cost visible. Socialism hides the cost until it explodes. That's why it's so dangerous, okay? Whenever you hear the word free, this is what I want you to think of. Every time you hear the word free, wake up, ask, there is no such thing as free. Who is actually paying? If it's the rich, you know exactly what this pattern is. If the answer is vague, you know the truth, okay? The worst part of this is people actually do need help with childcare. Families are drowning. But instead of fixing the cost drivers, regulation, liability, licensing, insurance, politicians build a new, on top of all that, government system that costs even more. And once they exist, they never, ever go away. All right. So let me give you some analogies to show you how this actually works every time. When you're thinking about socialism, I want you to think about this. Imagine a politician that opens a restaurant and he says, from now on, everyone eats here for free. Because that's what's happening in New York, the grocery stores. Don't worry, it's not going to cost you anything. Well, at first, lines are wrapping around the block. And then you find out something really interesting. The restaurant's hamburgers are actually costing $36 each to make. Every other restaurant in town is selling the same exact burger for maybe $23. This is $36. The government restaurant is now 55% more expensive than the private ones, but you don't care because you're eating for free. Okay, you're not paying. Somebody else is paying the bill, so you don't care. Well, it's free. Demand explodes. Now the restaurant needs more staff, more kitchens, more buildings. Got all kinds of regulations. Got to pay people a living wage. Costs are skyrocketing. And eventually the politician walks out and says, we have a crisis. We have to raise taxes. Okay? That's the way it always happens. Next one. Free gym membership. Imagine your gym says, membership is now free. Great, you think. What happens tomorrow? Well, you get to the gym and every treadmill is full. Weights are everywhere. People are sitting on the machine. They're scrolling on their phones. There's a long line to get in. Because when something costs nothing, everybody will flock, but people treat it like it's worth nothing, okay? Markets ration through price. Government rations through shortages. This is why socialist systems end up with waiting lists and rationing and bureaucratic approvals. You'll see it everywhere. Healthcare systems, housing programs, food subsidies. Ever gone to government housing? It's not a nice place. Okay? Demand explodes because the price signal disappears, and then people don't treat it as anything of any value because they didn't have to work for it. Okay? Last one. Town with one doctor. Imagine there's a town with 5 doctors. Competition with these 5 doctors keeps everything reasonable. But then the government says healthcare is a right and it's free. Well, that sounds great. We have 5 doctors. We're fine. But now every single person goes to the doctor for every single thing. You got a headache, go to the doctor. You got a cold, go to the doctor. Paper cut, go to the doctor. Because it's free. The town still has 5 doctors and it was working. But what happened? Now everybody's going, so you're waiting 6 months, a year. Now politicians are blaming the doctors and demand the government take control of the clinics. Or worse yet, they start to say, you know what, maybe we can make some of these problems going away by introducing MAID, a medical assistance in dying program. Because it's a simple law of economics. There's a law that has never, ever been broken, not once in human history. When you subsidize something, you get more of it. You're trying to get housing prices down, you subsidize it, and the housing prices go up. You want to make tuition cheaper for college, subsidize college, and tuition will go up. Subsidize health care. Cost will go up. Wait, what? And now New York is subsidizing child care, and somehow or another, politicians are shocked that the government version is $13,000 more per child than the private market. This one's $73 million. It's going to expand. Where it stops, nobody knows. Thank you for thinking for yourself and being part of a movement, because that's really what all of this is. If you want the full story, you want to go deeper, go to blazetv.com/Glenn. Go there right now, sign up, no interruptions, just the truth, uncensored and unfiltered. Don't just watch, take a stand. And I'll see you over there in a minute.